The world watched as G7 leaders gathered in Canada, with Prime Minister Mark Carney at the helm. The agenda was packed: trade, climate, security. But the real story was the tension in the air. Former US President Donald Trump's presence brought unpredictability, his positions clashing with other leaders. Even before meetings began, the atmosphere was charged, with every interaction scrutinized. As leaders arrived, a sudden conflict in the Middle East forced an immediate shift from planned discussions to crisis response. The summit became a real-time test of diplomacy, as leaders juggled urgent crises and deep disagreements. For Carney, it was more than event management. It was about steering global conversations toward real solutions. The world watched, knowing the stakes had never been higher. Even before the summit officially kicked off, Donald Trump was already dominating the headlines with a series of bold and provocative statements that set the stage for what was to come. His remarks, delivered with characteristic flair, immediately captured the world's attention and signaled that this would be no ordinary gathering of global leaders. Trump launched into a sharp critique of US immigration policy, claiming it was nothing more than a calculated political maneuver orchestrated by Democrats to gain an advantage. He accused his opponents of using immigration as a tool to sway public opinion and influence future elections. According to Trump, millions of people had crossed into the United States, including individuals with criminal backgrounds and ex-prisoners, raising concerns about national security and public safety. He went further, directly accusing the current administration of deliberately seeking to expand the voter base by allowing these new arrivals, a claim that sparked immediate controversy and debate among both supporters and critics. Shifting to foreign policy, Trump argued that removing Russia from the G8 was a grave mistake. He insisted that Russia's participation was essential for maintaining global stability and addressing major international crises. Trump boldly claimed that, had he been in charge, his unique brand of diplomacy could have prevented many of the conflicts currently raging around the world. This assertion set a confrontational and defiant tone, challenging other leaders to respond. On the economic front, he doubled down on his support for tariffs, making it clear that he was prepared for tough, possibly contentious trade negotiations with America's allies and rivals alike. Turning to the Middle East, Trump suggested that Iran was eager to de-escalate tensions, but warned that time was running out for them to take meaningful action, hinting at possible consequences if they failed to do so. These sweeping and often controversial remarks quickly shifted the media's focus, dominating news cycles and setting a tense, unpredictable mood for the summit's opening hours. Now, the G7 leaders faced a daunting challenge: how to respond to Trump's provocations while still trying to keep the summit on track and focused on the official agenda of global cooperation. Prime Minister Carney and his counterparts were forced to make a critical decision. Should they engage directly with Trump's confrontational rhetoric or attempt to steer the conversation back to the pressing priorities of the G7? The early hours of the summit were thus defined by this delicate balancing act, as world leaders navigated the fine line between confrontation and collaboration, all under the watchful gaze of a global audience. As the summit opened, anticipation was high, with leaders from the world's most powerful economies gathering to address pressing global issues. The atmosphere was charged with expectation as cameras flashed and delegations hurried into the grand venue. Suddenly, breaking news flashed across screens, reports of a rapid and dangerous escalation between Israel and Iran. The world watched in real time as tensions in the Middle East threatened to spiral out of control, sending shockwaves through the summit. The crisis instantly overshadowed the carefully planned agenda, forcing leaders to drop their original topics and shift into emergency mode. Urgency filled the air as they convened for a high-stakes, unscheduled meeting, their faces etched with concern. Within hours, G7 nations issued a joint call for de-escalation, urging all parties to show restraint and avoid further violence. Their statement was broadcast worldwide, aiming to calm markets and reassure anxious citizens. This show of unity was crucial for global stability, but cracks quickly appeared. There was no direct call for a ceasefire, and the language was carefully measured to avoid alienating any side. Behind the scenes, some leaders pushed for a tougher stance and stronger condemnation, while others urged caution, warning that harsh words could inflame the situation further. Former President Trump, never one to shy away from controversy, offered his own take to the press, suggesting that Iran was looking for a way out of the confrontation and hinting at possible diplomatic openings. The crisis underscored the G7's vital role as a forum for urgent global response, even as deep differences among the leaders became apparent. The world looked to them for leadership in a moment of uncertainty. Leaders now had to juggle their original agenda, climate, trade, and security, with the immediate need to address the escalating conflict, making tough choices about priorities. The Middle East crisis dominated every discussion, shaping the summit's tone and urgency, and pushing other issues into the background as the world waited for their response. Behind closed doors, the challenge was clear. While there was unity on basic principles, divisions ran deep over what concrete actions to take and how far to go in confronting the crisis. As the summit continued, it was clear that the Middle East crisis would remain at the very heart of every conversation, shaping decisions and testing the unity of the world's leading powers. Trade talks took center stage at the G7 summit, with Mark Carney and Donald Trump sitting across from each other, both representing not just their countries, but two very different visions for the global economy. The atmosphere was charged as world leaders gathered to hash out the future of international commerce, knowing that the stakes had never been higher. After hours of tense, sometimes heated discussions, both sides managed to find a sliver of common ground. They agreed to keep the dialogue open for 30 more days, a small but significant step forward in a climate where even talking can be seen as progress. The handshake between negotiators was more symbolic than celebratory, but it kept hope alive. Trump's unwavering insistence on imposing tariffs clashed head-on with the other G7 leaders' push for open, rules-based trade. He argued that tariffs were necessary to protect American jobs and industries, while others warned that such measures could spark a damaging trade war. The summit quickly became a battleground of economic philosophies, U.S. protectionism on one side, and a call for global collaboration on the other. The room was divided, with passionate debates echoing the broader tensions shaping the world economy. Amid the discord, Carney seized the opportunity to promote Canada's strategy of diversifying trade beyond its traditional reliance on the U.S. He spoke to journalists and delegates about the importance of building new partnerships and reducing economic vulnerability. Carney pitched Canada as a reliable and stable partner to both Europe and Asia, seeking to forge new economic alliances that could withstand the turbulence of U.S. policy shifts. These meetings were crucial steps toward expanding Canada's global reach. The outcome of the summit was mixed. There was progress in keeping the conversation alive, but no concrete resolution on the contentious issue of tariffs. Leaders left the room with thoughtful expressions, aware that the hardest work still lay ahead. The summit exposed deep divisions between nations, but it also revealed a shared willingness to keep negotiating, even when agreement seemed out of reach. The visible tension in group photos told the story of a world at a crossroads. For Carney, the summit was about more than just U.S. relations. It was about positioning Canada as a key player on the global stage, ready to adapt and thrive in a rapidly changing economic landscape. The world's economic future, it seemed, would be shaped by a delicate balance of confrontation and cooperation. Every handshake and every stern face was a reminder of the complexity of global trade. As the G7 summit ended, leaders departed with open questions, but also with open channels for future dialogue. The door to negotiation remained ajar, signaling that the conversation was far from finished. The trade debate was far from over. Headlines around the world reflected the uncertainty, as nations braced for the next round in this high-stakes game of trade and tariffs. Just before the summit's official start, Trump's press conference ran long, dominating headlines. He spoke at length on immigration, Russia, and the Middle East, delaying the summit's schedule. Prime Minister Carney stepped in, firmly ending the session to keep the summit on track. The move was seen as necessary, Carney asserting control and emphasizing the urgency of the agenda. Some called it a humiliation for Trump. Others saw strong leadership from Carney. The incident underscored the challenge of managing big personalities and tight schedules. It was a reminder at high-stakes summits, decisive action is sometimes the only way forward. Despite tensions and Trump's early exit, the G7 found common ground on key issues. Leaders issued joint statements on AI, quantum computing, and wildfire cooperation, signs of progress on science and the environment. The united call for de-escalation in the Middle East was a major diplomatic achievement. Canada pledged new aid to Ukraine, though a strong joint statement was blocked by U.S. resistance. On trade, Canada and the U.S. agreed to keep negotiating, a small but meaningful diplomatic win. The summit revealed both the limits and the potential of G7 cooperation. Even amid deep divisions, the group made real commitments. The G7 proved it remains a vital forum for tackling global challenges. Canada's top goal was clear: reduce economic dependence on the U.S. Carney used the summit to strengthen ties with Europe and Japan, pitching Canada as a stable, attractive partner. The trade talks with Trump were just one piece of a broader diversification strategy. Carney's outreach aimed to build a resilient network of global partnerships. Hosting the summit allowed Canada to showcase its leadership and stability on the world stage. Navigating political sensitivities, Carney reinforced Canada's image as a key diplomatic player. The message: Canada is open for business, ready for new investment, and determined to secure its economic future. The summit was a step toward a more independent, prosperous Canada. The G7 summit was a crash course in modern diplomacy, planned agendas upended by real-world crises. The sudden Middle East conflict forced leaders to adapt instantly, testing their flexibility and unity. Trump's early departure shifted the summit's tone, making collaboration easier for some. The event highlighted how personalities and politics shape outcomes, for better or worse. Despite challenges, leaders found unity on urgent issues and kept vital negotiations alive. The summit was messy, difficult, and essential, a microcosm of global diplomacy today. In the end, the value of meeting and talking was reaffirmed. The G7 summit in Canada captured the drama and difficulty of global cooperation in a divided world. Carney's leadership, Trump's provocations, and the Middle East crisis all tested the limits of diplomacy. Deep divisions on trade and security were clear, but so was the need for collective action. Despite setbacks, the summit delivered progress on technology, environment, and crisis response. The agreement to keep talking, especially between Canada and the U.S., was a small but vital victory. The lesson: cooperation is harder than ever, but more necessary than ever. In a world of instant crises and polarization, dialogue remains our best hope. The quest for global solutions continues, because the challenges we face demand nothing less.